and in a way they won because, spoiler alert everyone, the little girl lived. Priest didn't, but the little girl lived. I don't know why they would be against it, because it had a good message, and other than some people such as yourself, Aidan, it pushed people away for things like the Ouija board. And
maybe he saw something in me and was like, this one's destined for evil.
I think you just had a very strict and strange
I did,
priest.
yeah. He was a very strict French Roman Catholic priest.
Yeah, no, that's what I figured.
But yeah, so I have a fraught relationship with the Exorcist in church.
Well, see, okay, this is probably every time you think about it, this is what comes up in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether, getting back on topic again, whether the Ouija board is dangerous or not, it's another angle. Something I've always told people over the years, we've used them at the hunts. I brought them out to even walk sometimes if I want to add a little special feature. People can, try it out and see what happens. I did it at the Scottish Rite, so I wanted to see if we could stir stuff up. And I always tell people the same thing. Over the years I've learned this, 3 basic rules that you should follow with it, because even though it's not as dangerous as people say, there's still dangers with it. So I always told people, first off, always say goodbye. Even if it's just, just set your own mind to an ending on it. You're closing the door, so to speak. Never treat it like a game. It's a very serious communication tool. And the final one is the people that don't want to hear is don't use it in your home. Because the worst possible scenario that could happen is you invite a negative energy in. We were talking about that earlier, Ian. So the negative energy, if it invades your home, and I've experienced this personally, it's almost like it sets up shop in a certain part of the home, a room, an area, and then if you go into it, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel different. It affects your emotions. I'll give a quick example. I've told it before, so I won't go too in detail, but it was after investigation. Something followed us home. It was a very negative energy. It stuck around in the living room. And you couldn't be in the living room at night with the lights out. The feeling of anxiety and dread was insane. And I'm not afraid of the dark in any way. It just was insane. Things were happening around the apartment. The cats would always fight with each other just in that one little area. So I learned the lesson is that this emotion affects us as living beings. And you could, get into fights with your loved ones. You could get into arguments with your spouse, and it's all happening in that one space because for some reason you just feel angry. You don't know why, and it hurts relationships, and you don't even know it's coming from an external source. That's the worst. Nobody's been lifted up and had their skin pulled off or thrown out a window or anything. That's the worst I've ever heard of. Energies that affect your emotions and affect your well-being, but that can either easily be cleared if you're not afraid or easily pass. And what do you guys think about that? Don't everybody rush up.
Well, I've never had any luck using a board myself. I do know people who have used it. And some of these people have told me that their lives have just been hell after using it. But again, I think it comes down to you don't know where this energy is coming from. There's no, when you're using a talking board or Ouija board, whatever you want to call it, there's no safeguards to channel out any negative energy. You don't know what's going to come through.
Did they give you any specific experiences?
Both of these stories were from so long ago, and the one did give specifics. I really don't remember what. The other one, a friend of mine, she would not. She just said, her life was hell after using it, but she wouldn't give me any details. So maybe it's a story I can try to find out sometime in the future. But I think. Of course, they market this as a game. You can buy it in the toy stores.
Yes.
And it's not a game. It's not a game. It's a serious communication tool. Or can be used as such. And I really think you need to know what you're doing using this device.
Well, this is that disrespect we were talking about before the podcast started. on the idea of ghosts. So if somebody steps forward, which seems to be becoming more prevalent now, like more and more people are thinking this way. When you say, "Oh, I have a good ghost story to tell you," or "This place is haunted," they immediately laugh it off and said, "Oh, that's funny that you think that." It's almost made fun of. So anything that revolves around the idea of spiritual, because we're living in a very scientific world right now, is laughed off. So selling a Ouija board in Toys R Us, which I think the one time I visited, I looked, and it was a pink one marketed to girls, and it was like it was done up like a purse or something.
Yeah.
I was like, they just went over the top on these things. It becomes part of the joke.
Well, I've read stories on the internet where there have been children's birthday parties, and the parents have held a Ouija seance at this children's birthday party, and it's like, oh dear God, are you serious?
I've never heard that before, man.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like,
did anything happen?
well, I don't know. It was just, I've heard that these have happened, and I just shake my head. Well, like, what on earth are you thinking?
Yeah, I managed a Toys R Us for 5 years back in Sarnia, and we sold Ouija boards like crazy. But we had one guy that worked there that was dead set against it. And if people asked him if we had Ouija boards, he would say no. And if he saw somebody with the Ouija board, he would go up and talk to them and say, "Hey, you really shouldn't be." We eventually had to let him go because you can't walk up to customers and freak them out and be like, "Just so you know, don't buy that." But he never got into specifics, but he said he and his wife had an experience with a Ouija board that forever changed his views on them. And he's, if he's going to work there, he's going to crusade against anybody ever having anything to do with it. So obviously I kept, trying to get details out of him because I'm fascinated right away. I didn't care about his plight. I just wanted to hear the story. And he wouldn't talk about it at all. He said, no, if I talked about it to the wrong person, it would just make me want to use it more. But nobody should ever use one of those. But yeah, we had a talking Ouija board, which kind of takes the fun out of it.
Wait, a talking Ouija board?
You put batteries in it, and it would spell out the letters.
Oh.
Yeah. Which I guess is good for the visually impaired. Maybe that's what it was for. And then the pink suitcase one, and then your classic, wooden Milton Bradley. But we sold them like crazy. Like, it was nuts. But I think that's what kind of starts. Like, when I used it as a kid, I definitely used it as a toy disrespectfully. Completely, I'll own up to it. I didn't know any better. I just saw it on The Exorcist. I thought it was really cool. I totally forgotten about this. My friend at Thanksgiving said, "Hey, do you remember when we made a Ouija board?" And I had no memory of it whatsoever. And he said, "Yeah, my mom," this is my best friend, so we're 5 years old. So my mom was cleaning out the basement, and she sent me this picture, and it was this old, crudely drawn Ouija board. And I have a really, really good memory going all the way back, and I have zero recollection of this whatsoever. And he showed me the picture of it, and nothing. I don't remember making it. I don't remember using that. I remember using an actual one, later on.
So you think you were like possessed by something?
Well, it's weird that I have absolutely no. But
imagine if somebody walked in while you were doing it. Their eyes are glowing red, like drawing it out.
Well, his mom was a lovely woman, in case he listens to this, but very strict about that kind of thing. And I think that she probably said, "No, there's no way you guys are having a Ouija board in this house." So we said, "Well, it's just, we can make our own." But I remember being back as a kid, and it would start moving, and we'd get really freaked out. But you'd ask stupid questions like, "Who's going to ask me to the dance?" And then it would start spelling out somebody's name, and I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense that the spirit knows the people that go to my school. It's probably just my friend moving it around.
Or it could be picking it out of your mind, too. 'Cause
Well,
it's
yeah,
that you personally know.
That's it, too. Just the Ouija board is an extension of your own, thoughts and desires, and, that almost unconsciously coming out through your fingertips and writing what you want.
Yeah, like coming through your subconscious. I want to talk about that, but before I mentioned, you talked about using it. So I did that too. It was like when I met my ex years and years ago. I was like 19, and we used the Ouija board at my parents' house. My parents are very religious, and if they had known, I told them many years later, like, what? But I said, yeah, no, we snuck a Ouija board in, we were using it, and it was the first time we ever used it, and we were talking, and this energy came through. It was a semi-detached house, and it said it was from next door. We found out later that next door there was somebody who was a little mentally unbalanced, We wondered if it was coming from him. But either way, we were back and forth, and usually it didn't work well for us. But we were talking to each other, and we just left our hands on the planchette, and without even asking a question of the board, it took off. And because we were joking with each other, it spelled out you, not the full word, but just the letter U, are a happy couple. And we weren't even paying attention. It just did it on its own. So from that point, I was kind of hooked, because I was like, crap.
Sure.
But a lot of the times afterwards, it didn't really work well. But on the thing you brought up, Aidan, about the idea that's coming from your subconscious, that's something I've talked to many people about over the years. And I always tell people, if you want to test this, and this is for anybody listening who uses the board, the person who is the subject of what's being talked about, make sure they're not touching the planchette. Because I do believe that's possible. That you don't know it, you're not playing around, you're not screwing around. You think the planchette's moving on its own, but that your hand is moving on its own, it's picking up from your subconscious, or like that energy that's within all of us. So if I were to ask the question while I'm touching the planchette, what color is my underwear? It's gonna spell out correctly. But if I ask somebody from across the room and it gets it right, then that's something else. We did that years ago. Maybe you were on this, Matthew. Oh, by the way, Matthew here is here as well. Those are listening. It was a trip to, I believe, West Virginia Penitentiary. Maybe not. But anyway, or it was Mansfield. It was one of those two. But we used
the Mansfield Reformatory.
Yeah, we used the board, and we did a test. So it was a bunch of us at the board, and then Nick Spring, who was the investigator, he was away from us. And so what we did is we had only Nick, go into a cell, pick something off of the wall, like graffiti, and come back with that in his head, but not touching the planchette, and then ask the spirit what's on the wall in the other cell. And it was right. Like, it actually guessed what it was. I forgot what it was. And that's a wonderful test. So that it's not coming from the subconscious. You might have something else on the board. Like with my experience, so you are a happy couple. We weren't even paying attention when it happened. So yes, I do believe that's possible, that it could track your subconscious, but there's ways to test around that. Matthew, have you had any experiences with the board?
Not too many experiences. I would think if there were any, it was mostly with either Haunted Hamilton or Through the Ghost Box.
Were you sorry?
I know when we were at the Ottawa jail, we were in Patrick Whalen's cell. I wasn't using it personally, but I was just observing and taking pictures to see if I could get anything. But
I wonder if we would have gotten in trouble if they had known. Because we were up, I think it was around, it was the middle of the night, maybe either midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Those who don't know, the Ottawa jail is a hostel. You can stay there overnight, and basically you have access to most of the building the entire night if you're staying in there, including death row, which of course they don't put any cells to stay overnight on death row. It's just intact on how it used to look. And Patrick Whalen was the man who supposedly assassinated Darcy McGee in Ottawa. There's like a famous political figure, and they hanged him in the Ottawa jail. So we went up to Whalen's cell. You were there, Matthew, and we set up the board on the bed, on the cot, and we're talking. You said that, I don't remember that part, but you said there was an issue with the door?
I think that there was an issue with the door. I guess when they took the tour around, they mentioned that when the cell door was closed, they couldn't get to open, even though it was unlocked. And I guess there was a moment where they were able to to finally open the door. But I mean, in that instance, with using the Ouija board, you just hope that no one ever closes the door or test the door to see what happens.
You know what? Actually, it just came back. I remember the whole time we were standing in the cell, I was so afraid that we were going to get trapped in there. He wouldn't be able to open the door.
Because apparently, I think there was one story that they were telling us in the jail and death row